Please subscribe to my channel. And hit the bell icon. Mob Psycho 100 and My Hero Academia are two of the greatest new anime of the previous decade. But which shonen anime is good? My Hero Academia, which is about a general public of superheroes. It centers especially around Deku, a youngster who fantasies about turning into the main saint in the wake of being enlivened by his golden calf, All Might. The fame of My Hero Academia has made it an advancement achievement, viewed by numerous individuals outside of anime's standard being a fan. Mob Psycho 100, then again, is a more specialty anime that is profoundly commended by its bad-to-the-bone fanbase, yet primarily obscure past the anime network. It follows the character of Mob, a center-school kid brought into the world with amazing mystic capacities. Despite the fact that the show has the trappings of a forced dream-overwhelming shonen anime, it opposes all desires as it evils, heading rather toward a path that, albeit less climactic as the enormous battles of My Hero Academia, winds up feeling all the more impressive and sincerely hard-hitting. The best way to explain how is by comparing their two lead protagonists. Unlike the people of his world who are blessed with unique abilities known as quirks, My Hero Academia's Deku was born quirkless. Because of this, he is discouraged by the acknowledgement that he won't have the option to turn into the following All Might, Japan's superheroic symbol of peace. Be that as it may, this progressions when All Might gets a brief look at Deku's latent capacity and, dazzled by his shonen hero-like conduct, chooses to make him the replacement of his capacity. Deku is, consequently, the encapsulation of the divinely selected individual model. Rather than being an individual who isn't regarded, uncommon, by the guidelines of his general public, he is talented with the ability to become who he needs. He may make a solid effort to sharpen and utilize this force, however he's despite everything working at an impressive bit of leeway with it. Mob Psycho 100 shows that nobody is better than any other person and that everybody can be the hero of their own lives. In the case of anything turns out badly, they include the capacity inside themselves to beat it without depending on a hero to make all the difference. While My Hero Academia will in general prize a portion of its characters for having progressively narcissistic beliefs of courage, as Bakugo. My Hero Academia has many other areas where it relies on standard tropes instead of doing something new. The series' prime antagonist, All for One, was a typical overpowered villain that was evil for the sake of it. That isn't to say, though, that My Hero Academia hasn't produced more nuanced villains. Stain, for instance, whose ideology stands against everything the heroes hold dear. But more often than not, most of its antagonists are usually one-note and simple. Mob Psycho 100's Mob is the direct opposite of this. For a certain something, looks dull, dissimilar to the more interesting-looking heroes of other comparative anime. He is born with natural psychic powers, but instead chooses to improve himself through hard work and rely on his gifts as little as possible. This is mainly because a traumatic childhood event made him realize that his powers are dangerous, and they don't make him better than other people. He doesn't have the ambition of becoming the best psychic in the world, instead, he struggles with typical middle schooler problems, such as having a crush on a girl, longing to be popular or wanting to develop muscles. Instead of being a superhero through his powers, he tries his hardest to simply get along with normal people. He wants to be successful through his own hard-earned abilities, and not natural-born or handed-down gifts. The center distinction between the two shows can maybe best be summed up by what every attempt to achieve with its account. My Hero Academia gives an existence where uncommon individuals are praised and compensated for their intrinsic courage. It is a tale about legends kicking butts and accomplishing vainglorious desire. Mob Psycho 100 kills the entirety of this, rather, giving a substantially more practical message of modesty, self-responsibility and the drive for personal development in other, non-physical ways, which might be an unquestionably progressively attainable message for its shonen segment. This is perhaps what puts Mob Psycho 100 above My Hero Academia as a shonen anime. The latter is still a very enjoyable show that does what it does well, however, it doesn't offer anything new or insightful to its viewers. Mob Psycho 100 is a deconstruction of the very things My Hero Academia stakes its popularity on, and one of the most unique shonen anime to come around in a long time. Which is your favorite shonen anime from these two? Write it down in the comment section. Thank you for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. For more amazing videos, subscribe to my channel. Until then, plus ultra.